Good to see everyone out this morning. Everyone's presence here this morning. We're indeed thankful and blessed. We have another opportunity to come together to serve God. We're indeed thankful for those that have been away from us, that are back with us here this morning. We're good to have a good crowd out with us. We're indeed thankful and blessed for that. I want you to think with me. We are continuing this morning in our series in the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5 is where we are at, and we are going to continue this morning and looking at verse 21 down to verse 26 for our lesson this morning. Matthew chapter 5, verse 21 down to verse 26 for those, if you're wanting to follow along. I do have the papers back, I do have the computer back as well, got everything back and working in order. I felt like it was one of my security blankets that I had that I was missing last week. And indeed thankful to have all of it back working. And I know some had expressed how they missed having the following outlines and everything last week. But we'll look at Matthew chapter 5, verse 21 down to verse 26 as we have time and opportunity this morning. I want you to think of a quote with me this morning about anger. Anger is momentary madness. So control your passion, or it will control you. I think there's some truth in these thoughts. When it comes to anger, anger is sometimes a loss of self-control if we allow it to happen. And we see that there are things that we instantly regret that we do in anger. And I want you to think with me as Jesus continues, as we begin looking at this morning, some of the quotes that Jesus said, you have heard that it was said before. You've learned that it was this way before. So now I say to you. That's what we're going to be looking at in the next series of these lessons in the Sermon on the Mount. And beginning there in Matthew chapter 5, verse 21, down to verse 26, talking about issues of the heart is what we're going to look at this week and next week. And in particular this morning, we want to talk about anger. Matthew 5, beginning in verse 21. It says, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder. Whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly, while you are on your way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge hand you over to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Surely I say to you, you'll by no means get out of there till you have paid the last penny. We're going to talk about some issues of the heart. And we're going to talk a little bit about murder, but then kind of looking at more of a root cause of everything here this morning as time allows us. I want you to think with me that there's a deeper issue when it comes to murder. It comes to the heart. Meaning, as I want to think about it, if you're outside and you got your grass, and you see all the weeds or dandelions, some people think they're beautiful, some people think they're a pest, whichever way you think about it. Some people will look at that and say, you know what, I want to get rid of those dandelions. I want to get rid of those weeds. I want to get rid of those things. And so the way that some people might want to do it is they're going to get their lawnmower out, and they're just going to chop all of it off. That way it's gone. That way you can't see it. It's something that's visible to my mind, to my eye, and I'm going to take care of that source right there. I'm going to take care of that problem right there. What happens when you cut the dandelions or the weeds? The next day, it's like whenever you pull a gray hair. If you pull out one gray hair, how many come back? Some people say 3, 2, 3, 5. I don't know. Whatever it may be. There's more that comes back. And why is that? Because you didn't get to the root of the problem. What you got to do is, in order to get rid of those weeds and dandelions, you got to do some treatment, maybe throw some different types of fertilizer, some sort of weed control on there, and being able to get down to the root cause of what's causing those things to perk up. Murder, as you think about it with me, is a surface problem. I was talking with Justine about it today a little bit. She asked me what I was doing. And it's kind of funny because I'm sitting here last week doing some finishing touch, getting everything ready for today on anger. And then yesterday I was doing a web. I was talking about love and anger. Sitting there trying to make sure I didn't take the wrong outline for whichever one. Get to just think about how my mind works with some of that. But I found it kind of amusing a little bit yesterday when I was thinking about it. But murder is a surface problem. There is a deeper issue when it comes to things. There's been a very, if you're following some of the different things, there was a very hot button murder case that just had a verdict last week down in Texas over 2 young kids at high school at a track meet. And, I was listening to some of the different commentary on some of the things on it, and some people were talking about, said, this person that murdered the other kid didn't know him, had no idea of who he was, and just kind of killed him just out of sporadic reason. Well, while the action might be sporadic on who it was, there may have been a deeper cause. As we're going to talk about it here this morning. But let's begin thinking about this here this morning. As we talk about murder is a sin, taking someone's life. But again, there are more motives and characteristics that lead up to this. But let's talk, first of all, about the subject of murder as we kind of build up getting into the root cause of everything. Let's talk about God's view on murder. A couple of weeks ago we were talking about Christ came and fulfilled all things and fulfilled all things pertaining to the law. Within the law, what we were reading and studying together last week, or 2 weeks ago, coming from Deuteronomy chapter 5, look at verse 17 with me. Within the confines of the law, we read that God spoke about murder. And in Deuteronomy chapter 5, and look at verse 17 with me, it simply says, you shall not commit murder. You shall not murder. God had a view from the very beginning, simply stating, for those of Israel, you do not commit murder. Do not take someone's life. You have an even further definition of this. If you say in the Old Testament with me, look over in Proverbs chapter 6 and look at verse 16 down to verse 19. Proverbs chapter 6, beginning with verse 16, and let's read down to verse 19. Proverbs 6, beginning with verse 16. It says, these things the Lord hates. These 6 things the Lord hates. Yet 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. There's 2 or 3 of these in particular here that we could talk about. They're kind of all clustered together. First of all, it states here there are things that God hates, God disapproves of. Now, one that we obviously look, hands that shed innocent blood. There's one of them right there, where God specifically is very direct with everything. He hates it. If he hates it, then we are too supposed to hate such things. But hands that shed innocent blood. And we can look at all sorts of different ways of hands shedding innocent blood. Young and old. Doesn't matter the age. Doesn't matter, when we look at abortion, that is a way of taking a life from someone. We start looking at some of the different. There are things that God disapproves, that he does indeed hate. He has never liked when someone is taking innocent blood. It states here these different. And then also, think about that next one with me. A heart that devises wicked plans. May not think, some people may not think along those lines about murder, but think about it. There are people that have these well-drawn, thought-out plans of what they may want to do to a person, a group of people, you name it. We could look in history with different types of rulers of the world that have committed genocide. They've come up with some real wicked plans to try to eliminate, exterminate certain groups of people. You go back to the 1st century, Roman emperor, got a few of them that were pretty wicked individuals around that 60, 70, 80 AD realm. What were they wanting to do? They had devised and come up with plans to try to exterminate Christianity. You have someone that has decided they want to murder someone, and they go through the whole process of figuring out all the different plans. And sometimes whenever they are confronted with it, they're found out to be guilty of things, they go to court, they'll explain maybe even some of their plans they had and had thought about what they wanted to do for a long time. Then you can also look at, I don't have it up here, but a heart or feet that are swift to running to evil. That also kind of can fit the bill when we think about the idea of murder. What we look at here when God's view of things is that practicing it, committing it, doing it, taking action on it, those are not fit. These types of, there are actions that are not fit. They're sin that is not fit for the kingdom of heaven. If you look over in Galatians chapter 5, verse 19 down to verse 21. Galatians chapter 5, beginning in verse 19 and looking down to verse 21. Galatians 5, beginning in verse 19. It says here that the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, envy, murders, drunkenness, revelries, and the like, of which I tell you beforehand, as I told you in time past, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. There's a litany list of things that Paul writes here, of things, of actions that people will commit and are not fit for the kingdom of heaven. Those that do such things will not have the kingdom of heaven. If you commit murder, if you take someone's life, it's a sin. If we look at this, being able to have hands that shed innocent blood. Sin will not inherit the kingdom of God. And if I take someone's life in this way, I'm not going to gain an entrance into heaven unless I repent and I turn away from such actions. That's how God has a view when it comes to murder. But I want you to think with me that murder is just that surface area. Because one of the root causes behind murder is anger. Anger is the start, the root that leads to murder. Go back to Genesis chapter 4 with me. I want to read the account here in Genesis chapter 4, and beginning with verse 1, and we'll look down to verse 11 together. We're talking about Cain and Abel. In Genesis chapter 4, beginning with verse 1, and let's look down to verse 11. It says, now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. Then she bore again this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. So the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. And the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. So what about Cain and Abel? You've got two brothers who go and offer sacrifices to God. God respected the offering that Abel made, but he did not respect the offering that Cain made. And so as we look at this here, after both brothers had all made these offerings, and God did not respect Cain's offering, what happened to Cain next? It says that he became angry. That his countenance had fallen. God takes time to be able to teach Cain, to instruct Cain about what was going on. If you do well, will you not be accepted? There was something that with Cain's offering that was not acceptable to God. He did not do well. He did not offer his best. But God said, if you do your best, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin's going to lie at the door. And its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. There's sin that's right there at the footsteps of everything. And if you do not keep it in check, it will rule you. It will consume you. And you'll act out. As we read a little bit ago, what Mr. Horace writes there, when it comes to anger, anger is momentary madness. Where if we leave it unchecked, what's going to happen? We're going to do something we probably are going to regret. Whether it's what we say, what we do, whatever it might be. I can remember years ago, on one occasion for myself, we were getting ready to move. We were leaving Worcester, getting ready to move up to northern Ohio, and one of the bathrooms in our house needed some fixing. And I was trying to work on the toilet. Really what I should have done is just replace the whole toilet and get a new one, because I bought a cheap one 7 years prior to that, and I was just I was cheap and not wanting to try to fix something. Or not try to buy a better system. But anyway, nonetheless, something was going on. I can't remember exactly what was going on with the toilet. And whatever it was, I'd fix it, and then as soon as I fixed it, it came apart. And it did it like 5 times in a row. And then the next thing you know, I got angry at the toilet. And I grabbed my hand, and mind you, I'm 6'5", about 290 pounds at the time, a little lighter than what I am now, or a little heavier than what I am now. And I grabbed my hand and I slammed it against the wall. Not once, not twice, but on the third time, my hand goes through the wall. Now I've got a toilet to fix, and now I've got a wall to fix. And I regretted it, because then I cut my hand. I'm sitting there, Justina, because what's wrong? She heard me sitting there yelling and getting mad and slamming my hand on the wall. And she just looked, she opened the door, said what's wrong, saw the hole in the wall, and just closed the door. Just let me be. That was the best thing to do. What I'm getting at is that we get angry and we regret something, right? We have an action that we eventually might regret if we leave it unchecked. Cain is angry. He's let his countenance fall, and he wouldn't receive instruction at this point and became stubborn and set in his ways. And what does he do? He meets his brother. He wouldn't control his anger. Meets his brother, rises up against him and kills him. Why? Because God respected his brother's offering and not his. He would not let his anger be controlled, and we see that he took his brother's life. When you think about it with me this morning, about anger, anger needs to be resolved. Look over in Ephesians chapter 4 with me. Ephesians chapter 4. and look at verse 26 and 27. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 and verse 27. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 and verse 27. It says here, to be angry, and what does it say next? Do not sin, or sin not, as you read maybe in the King James. There are moments where you and I can be angry about things, but do not sin, or sin not. Now, as we look at this also, with this anger, it goes on to say, do not let the sun go down on your wrath. We're going to get into that here in just a few moments with our text in Matthew 5. But anger needs to be resolved, is what we look at here. Because as we look at verse 27, what else does it say? What warns it? Don't give place to the devil. Be angry, do not sin, and don't let Satan overtake you. Control your anger. When those issues come, don't let it fester. There's a different. I think the word fester is more appropriate. When we let something fester, what do you think about? It starts decaying, whatever it is around it. If you let vegetables or something fester, they start getting smelly, and you don't want to be around them. Whatever, maybe when you talk about something fester, or if you got a wound and you let it fester, what happens? It starts getting all the wonderful colors, and it doesn't smell pleasant, it doesn't look pleasant. Don't let your anger fester, because it's going to lead into more problems. Resolve the anger that one may have, what you may have with one another, or that someone may have with you. If you look over in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31, it says in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. So Paul warns about what to do with anger, and then clear it away. Again, this lesson is not to be able to talk about, in verse 26 where it says, be angry, do not sin. There are moments where we can be angry. We're not going to go into too much detail if that's one, but if you have anger that's leading, that maybe trying to, on the verge of consuming, or has to, you need to resolve it. You need to put it away. That way you don't give place to the devil. Now let's go back to our text. Kind of doing a little bit of reverse today. Usually sometimes we'll look at our text first and then kind of explore some different options. But I wanted to look at it this way this morning. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 5, verse 21 down to verse 26. The audience that's receiving these words from Jesus, they've heard it from days of old. They have been taught it generation after generation after generation. You shall not murder. Whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. That's what we see with the law. That's what they knew with the law. Was that if we commit murder, we're going to be standing in danger of judgment. But Jesus wants to get to a more root problem, where he says in verse 22, I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause. Now again, that kind of gets into what we're talking about, I just mentioned about without a cause. If you're angry with your brother without a cause, without a true reason, and you can't be angry, I'll bring it up, you can't be angry with me because I believe that Kentucky is the better prominent college team in all sports when it comes to things. I know some people here will get angry with me about that. That's not a justifiable cause. You just have to just accept it, that's all. But without a cause, there has to be a reason. And again, it's matters. We talk matters of sin, but you go back to this. Jesus says here, I say to whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of judgment. If you are angry with your brother without a cause, you are in danger of judgment. Not just the murder, not just the surface of everything, but getting to the root problem of everything. If you are angry with your brother without a cause, you will be in danger of the judgment. And so what Jesus teaches us here is that you're to resolve the anger with your brother. If you have a gift that you're going to take to the altar, as we read here in verse 23, if you are about to take your gift to the altar and you have something, or your brother has something against you, or maybe even you have something against your brother, before you even go to the altar and make your offering to God, go reconcile with your brother. Go resolve whatever type of issue of anger that you may have or they may have with you. If you know those things, reconcile, resolve any type of issue. Again, what happens if we let that anger continue to fester and stew within us? You know, that idea of going, don't let the sun go down your wrath. What happens if you let that anger, that wrath go down and you go to sleep and you wake up the next day? Are you feeling any better? Probably not. You're going to feel a lot worse. Especially if you're letting it, if you're focused on it, if you're consumed by it. And then if you get to the point where you're finally ready to resolve, and you do resolve it, there's a burden, there's a relief that gets lifted. Jesus teaches us, do not let the anger stew and fester where it becomes worse. Remember, as we look over in Mark 12, verse 31, when it comes to our neighbor, Jesus gave 2 commandments. You're to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. The second commandment, verse 31, like it, is you shall love your neighbors yourself. I don't know about you, but I don't like it when people are angry with me. I don't like it when people are upset and feeling hostilities towards me. I don't want people to feel that way towards me, and I don't need to be showing that way towards others. We're to love our neighbor as ourselves. Remember what we read over in Romans 12, verse 18? If you want peace, you got to pursue peace yourself. Let's go there and just read that real quick. Romans chapter 12, verse 18. We'll come back to Romans 12, I believe, in just a few moments after this. Romans chapter 12, verse 18. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Peace will happen when we pursue peace. And that's what Jesus is getting at here in verse 23 and 24. Reconcile with your brother. If you have a disagreement with your brother or sister, you need to reconcile. If there's a disagreement, if there's matters of sin, we're to reconcile. We're to do our best. Jesus, in fact, taught us about what we're to do when it comes to matters of sin in Matthew 18. What are we to do? We're to go to them and tell them and talk to them about whatever the case may be. If it's a matter of sin, it doesn't get resolved, bring others. If that doesn't work, bring the church. Sometimes withdrawal might have to be the case. But that's when we talk about sin. If I've got some sort of petty disagreement with one another, may not be on a matter of sin, but it can lead to sin. Resolve it still. Don't let it go down don't let the sun go down on your wrath. But reconcile with your brothers, the focus that Jesus gets here. But now, in verse 25 and 26, your enemy. What are you to do with your enemy? Agree with your adversary. As in verse 25 and verse 26. Agree with your adversary quickly while you're on the way with him. In fact, when we look over, we go back to Romans chapter 12. Look at verse 20 and 21 of Romans 12. It says here, therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. For in doing so, you'll heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Love your enemies. Be kind to one another. Share that kindness towards one another. Again, we go back to Ephesians 4, verse 26. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Be angry and do not sin, and let the sun go down on your wrath. If you don't resolve the issue with your adversary, with your enemy. You know what happens? There's a difference between your brother and enemies from adversary from time to time. Is that those that are your adversary might have, as Jesus warns you, have a different thought when it comes to the matter that you have between one another, and they may take you to court over such things and do whatever it is to get the maximum consequence on you. If brought before the courts, as we look here, your adversary delivers you to the judge because you have been angry and you have committed sin against him. You've done something, some sort of harm against him, something against him. Your adversary delivers you to the judge. Guess what's going to happen? If you're found guilty, you're going to pay the penalty. That's what Jesus pointed out. And you will pay until whatever the matter is completely resolved. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. But rather, when you think about it with me, we mentioned Mark 12:30 a few moments ago. The first commandment is this: love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. This is the first commandment. Removing the anger that leads to more problems is the way to go. Not just kind of touching base with the surface areas Jesus is teaching here in Mark 5. Don't just focus on the murder. Get to the heart of the matter. Get to the root cause of what may be causing one to think on these matters. Seek and obey the Lord. Do not be angry. Do not give place to sin. Remember, as we read in Romans 12, vengeance belongs to God. He will repay. God will take and have the final say in the end, and take vengeance on those who do not know Him, on those who do not obey Him, on those who are angry in sin. God will take vengeance on those who are living in sin. I appreciate you taking the time with me and looking at this morning. Brother Corrigan selected number 307 as our invitation song. If you want to open your songbooks there, we'll sing that song here in just a moment. But in offering an invitation this morning, I want you to think with me about what it means to become a child of God. It means to put away sin and begin to seek and serve God. Maybe some of the root cause of what is going on in your life is anger. Maybe you need to remove the anger in your life and turn to God before it's too late. Being angry can lead into all sorts of problems and frustrations and heartaches, both mentally and physically on our bodies. What you need to do is be able to focus on love. Loving God, loving your neighbor. Seeking and serving the Lord. If we can help you in answering that invitation call of seeking and serving the Lord this morning, we'll be glad to help you. As we're about to sing number 307, if you're accepting the invitation to make your life right God by ready to put on Christ in baptism this morning, we'll rejoice with you. If you're here and you've fallen away from God and need to be restored this morning, we're glad to pray with you, to offer prayers for forgiveness, to help you once again dedicate your life to God. Or maybe if you're dealing with the frustrations of this life and are needing some prayers of encouragement, we'll be glad to help you in those matters also. Whatever it may be, if you're subject to the invitation, let it be known how we can help you. And you can do so now. Once again, always stand and always say.